Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. And this is the place where writers like to gather. We talk about all things writing for writers and by writers. And we have such a good community here. We just love seeing each other once a week and supporting and encouraging each other. And we have a special guest today that I'm quite excited to hear about. My name is Jean Wise. I'm one of the co-hosts here, and I am joined today by my fellow co-host, Bethany Jett. And I'm going to turn it over to Bethany to introduce our guest and our topic today. So take it away, Bethany.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. My mom, Johnny Alexander, our other co-host, is finishing a novel that's due this week to the publisher. So yay, we're so excited for her. But she is excited to be able to listen to this as a replay because Del Duduit is our special guest today. Del is just an incredible guy. I want to go through his bio a little bit just to give you some background on who Del is, and then he can introduce himself. But he lives in Southern Ohio and was a sports writer. He's got 2 Associated Press awards for columns that he wrote, and including one of them was an interview with Larry Bird, which is amazing. He also won an award from the Ohio Prep Sports Writers Association and Ohio News Network. He's just a multiple award-winning author. He's got so many contest awards under his belt. He's just a fantastic writer. And he also is a guest blogger, and he has very successfully created a long list of books that have either been published or now are in the publication queue very fast after entering the writing conference world and networking and using those talents and skills that he has to do that. And Del, you've got Buckeye Believer, 40 Days of Devotions for the Ohio State Faithful, which is great. Dugout Devotions is another one. My copies are over here on the bookshelf. I should have grabbed them. First Down Devotions as well, and then a multitude of other books. So he just kind of hit the gate running and has been doing amazing. So Del, it is awesome to have you here, and we are excited to hear about, first of all, how you were able to network, how you were able to get those interviews, how to get so many books under contract so fast. We just are ready to sit at your feet. So welcome.
Well, thanks, Bethany. I really appreciate being welcomed here, being welcomed into the group, because it's an awesome group. The Serious Writer group is an amazing group of talented people that I'm fortunate to be a part of. And it is snowing out here in Ohio, and it's always a thrill to be invited to this. So I count that an honor, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. But yeah, it's been I entered the writing world about 3 years ago, down in Florida at the Florida Christian Writers Conference 3 years ago. And then it's been kind of a blur since then, had my mouth around a fire hydrant. So that's where I met Kyle Young, who's now my agent. And it was at that conference where a book idea, which was pitched to me, and I was so green enough, and I didn't even know it was being pitched to me at the time. So it was a book about a book about professional athletes and their struggles and their successes. And so a publisher who sat down to dinner with me and Kyle and kind of pitched the idea because he knew of my sports background. And I don't think he realized what I was going to do with this. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it either. So, I get back and I just start going to ball games, and I start doing research on professional baseball players who have a testimony of faith. And, I'd go down to a game, and I'd go to a Cubs game, and I'd get time with Ben Zobrist, or I'd go, when the Angels came into town, get with Albert Pujols, or when the Yankees came into town, I'd get with Aaron Judge and talk to them a few minutes about their faith. And it just kind of exploded and grew and grew and grew to where it developed to a really cool series. And so, part of the draw to the book, to First Down Devotions and Dugout Devotions, is the stories from these athletes that a lot of folks look up to and admire their play. So the book, like Dugout and First Down, Dugout is not about baseball. It's about the men who play it and the struggles or good circumstances they've gone through, and they give God the glory in them. So we use the baseball theme to obviously attract readers, because you're going to read about Brian Dozier, but you're not going to read about his baseball career. You're going to read about some of the things he went through to get to where he's playing baseball. So that's what it's about. And it's a lot of fun. But you mentioned Buckeye Believer was my first book out. I was able to get a big name on that book to help endorse it. And then Bengal Believer just launched, which, the Bengals stink right now. And maybe the book will encourage, maybe the people will get it to pray for the Bengals.
The book will be a winner. They may not win anything, but the book will win.
So in fact, we gave, unfortunately, I feel sorry for Andy Dalton, who's just been benched, but we were with him Sunday and we gave him some copies. Because his mom and dad wrote a nice endorsement for the book. So it was just bad timing. But I said, I understand if you don't want to tweet this out, but here's your couple of copies about it. So you'll see what he can do about it.
Wow. Well, you really had some amazing connections already when you entered this field. And I put in the chat that it says that, at first I'm thinking, wow, look at all the wonderful connections he's had, and feeling kind of sorry for myself. But, each one of us have connections if we would step back and really kind of look for those.
Yeah.
That's a real idea formulator for writers, I would think.
Yeah, it is. And that was one of the things I talked about last weekend is if you want, and not every book warrants it, but if you want to get a big name on your book, no matter who it is, no matter if it's politics or an actor or a sports figure, or an author or someone like that, you can do it. And there's ways to do it. And just like you said, you may have a friend who knows a friend who knows a friend who has a company. And all those pay off, because I was years ago when I was a sports writer, I had a guy kept bugging me. He says, I want to take you down and introduce you to Pete Rose. I kept blowing the guy off thinking, you're a goofball. You leave me alone. And so I called his bluff one day, and by golly, we walked into the restaurant, and there's Pete. And Pete says, Jack, how you doing? I'm like, oh my gosh, you do know him. So
I love Pete. I love Pete
too. He's awesome. We've met him numerous times. And he's not in the book, by the way, because obviously, but I thought, wow. So his contact gave me a good contact in Pete. So you never brush people off if they say, some people say they know somebody to impress, but just kind of take it to heart and say, do you really? Because, maybe, and of course our friend, Michelle Malik Adams has some great contacts. And it's at the same time, you don't want to burn those bridges. So if you, Bethany or Jan, if you guys want to get to somebody that I know, I'm going to put you in contact with them, or provide a way to put you in contact with them. So if you need somebody like that on your book, you can get them. I was able to get, Jim Tressel to write the foreword to my Buckeye Believer book, and Jim did not know me, but I was able to get to him to where he would put his name on my book. So there are ways to do it. And that's what we talked about last week. Don't get discouraged there. If you want to get whoever on your book, you can get to them. It takes some work. It takes some time. Yeah. It took me weeks. Literally weeks. And I went back and counted like 38 emails and like 27 text messages to get to Tim Tebow, but I got to Tim Tebow.
Wow. So, it makes me think so often we focus on the obstacle instead of saying, okay, this is the dream. I'm going to focus on that. And then just start asking. Well, we've got, you've used an example here. We've got a network here. And who knows, maybe Rhonda knows somebody who knows this person, who knows this person. And I can go up that route, even though it seems impossible at first. Don't focus on the impossible.
No, accept it as a challenge. Kyle Young and I have a book coming out next year about Michigan. I say Michigan football. Okay. So I know. So I'm going to rely on him because he has more contacts than I do at Michigan. But I'm going to work some. So it's working together and helping each other out. And so if somebody out there wants to try to get, if your book warrants a big name, obviously everybody wants some type of celebrity to endorse it. That's good, but it can be done and it can be accomplished. I look back on our tracking series when I posted a picture of me with Tim Tebow holding Dugout Devotions, and he's going to be in Dugout Devotions Volume 2. But when I posted that picture of us, I looked back at tracking, and my sales increased just because of a picture with me and Tim Tebow. Is nuts. So that's star power. What having a celebrity who's appropriate on your book. You don't want.
You've done an excellent job with social media too. When you say Bethany, he does with that.
Yeah, Dell's the king of Twitter, in my opinion.
Sometimes. I had a problem about a month ago. I had to get a password reset. I had somebody hacked into me, was liking things and tweeting things I would never tweet. So I had to get that shut down. So it happens. Everybody experiences that.
Yeah, it happens. But you've done an excellent job with that to kind of go along with good, well-written books too.
It does help. I mean, you have to put it out there.
And the thing is, I think Twitter.
I'm learning from Bethany and Michelle too. So.
What?
I'm watching you all.
Oh, well, I don't do Twitter as well as you do. That is for sure. And Twitter is one of the platforms I don't think we give enough credit to sometimes. But it's such a conversational platform, and like, just go see what Dell is doing on Twitter, guys.
I've made some fantastic contacts on Twitter. Mark Prasick, who I'll be on his show tonight on PJNet. We met on Twitter. Now he comes to conferences now. And it's amazing, some friendship. There's some freaks out there too. You got to be wary of those. But I've met some really good. One girl came to the conference because on Twitter she saw the feed on Twitter. Oh, what's this about this North Carolina conference? She came. She came to the conference because of Twitter. So I like Twitter. I don't like Twitter, but of all the social medias, I feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah. And that goes back to the premise we taught, especially Bethany has taught us before. Find one main, don't make that the only place. You still got to, but find one main social media and really do it well. And then you could add others. Isn't that what you've taught us, Bethany?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think you need to be on all of them, but the one that you feel the best at, like, go for it and really, make it work for you. Don't be good at that. So, like, okay, Del, at some point, and we could do this on the recording or off the recording, I would love just to be thinking about it for you to tell a story about how you've gotten into some, like, behind the scenes areas of different sporting events or like locker rooms or things that are on access.
Yeah, I do have media credentials, which help is the only way to get there. I do writing for my local paper. I have a weekly column in there. I don't work for them, but I have a weekly column. They want my opinion, which is always right. So I give them a weekly column, and in return, if I need to go to the Bengals game, they request credentials for me. And in return, like, I went to the game Sunday. They don't pay me, but they help me provide a credential, and I cover the game for them. So I'll send them a game story.
Wow!
And thank you. Or if I go to a Cleveland Indians game or wherever, I go there to work, but I also go to research. I go to research my next targets in my book. So I have access to the clubhouse. I have access to the locker rooms. I have access to these players. Baseball's easier because I can get to them, each player, 2 or 3 hours before a game. Football, I have to wait till the game's over, and then by that time they're wanting to get in and get out. So I have very limited time with a football player. I go to the Indy 500 and talk to racers. I talk to basketball players. So that's how I get that is through. So I encourage folks and writers, talk to your local paper about submitting being a regular columnist or a monthly columnist, and then go to, hey, Mr. Editor, I've been doing this. I need credentials of this event coming up. Can you give those to me, and I'll do a story for you. I don't. Most of the time, they're going to say, sure. Yeah, we love we love copy. We love more opinion. And so that's what I encourage people to do, or a radio station or television station. Get in good with them, volunteer, and then we scratch each other's backs, and we help each other out. I give them stories, and I give them columns, and in return, they provide me with the access that's been essential for my series. I got Devotions, First Down Devotions, and some other ones.
Yeah, and it's based on networking. And I got to tell you what's going on in the chat from Rhonda. We're going to name who says it. It says, reporting on the Bengals, it helps if you could write tragedy.
Oh, my gosh. It was awful. It was right. Yeah, that's helping me to write. Like, and then when we were right in the middle of a Browns devotional, and and we were going to, I mean, this is no joke. We were going to make it a, like, how to cope with loss book but then last year they started winning and they kind of turned around a little bit. Yeah. So we kind of had to change that format. But it was going to be a book about grief and about how to deal with loss. But, since it got Mayfield in there, they're winning a little bit. But yeah, the Bengals was a hideous game. And I wrote a story about it, nothing spiritual. I wrote a game story. I covered the game and then I go back and use the people I talked to for the book. I mean, look, during this series, I've become friends with the chaplain of the Bengals, and he wrote the foreword for my Bengals Believer book. So, yeah, you make good contacts and get people to write forwards who have some type of an impact on the team or exposure to the team. We're talking right now to the Browns chaplain about he'll probably write the foreword for the Browns devotional or the Browns Believer. And we were able to get a former Michigan player, former Brown, to write the foreword for the Michigan Motivations book. It'll be out next year. So that helps because some star power really helps on getting exposure to it.
It does. Well, that's great. Credibility too. That's a great deal of credibility.
Is the big thing because people will pick up. They'll find it at the Barnes & Noble. They'll see the Buckeye Believer, and they'll say, "Who the heck's Dell?" Oh, I know who Jim Tressel is.
Yeah.
And then they flip over and see the picture. Oh, credibility. It's instant credibility. If somebody, and a sellability, it helps sell it as well. Because if Jim Tressel, who did an endorsement for me, endorses it and they see that video, they're going to be 100 times more likely to buy it than if I'm doing it.
And also, too, it goes to connections as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're also reaching out to like the top guys, like coaches and things too, but then you're also looking at people who have the ear of those people. And so like with the chaplains, like they know so many people and so many players, and they're going to want to share that book too, because they're part of it. You've invited them into the story with you, which is so important.
Yeah. And the chaplain for the Bengals, a dynamic man. I've heard he was up in our area last year to hold a little 2-day revival. So we went over there, met up with him again. And I gave him the book the other day, and he's going to put it out there. He's going to promote it because his name's on it, and he wants everybody to see his stuff too. So his big following is going to be exposed to it. That's why it's essential, and it helps in my series to have kind of a big name on it because I'm not as well known now, but it's getting, I don't want to be well known, but their exposure is a whole lot more than I have right now. So if they can promote it and tweet it out, like, we did a book signing up in Pittsburgh with Clint Hurdle, who was, former manager of the Pirates, and I got fired. But they came to Barnes & Noble not because Dell was there. It was because Clint of the Pirates is going to be there. And that was awesome. He had a huge turnout. I don't care if they know who I am or not. So they came and bought the book because Clint was there, sit down with me in a Barnes & Noble for 2 hours in Pittsburgh and autographed books. So it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody asked the question about, do you think we could apply this for fiction writers too, about getting an endorsement of a well-known author or something like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's no cap on this. There's no limitation on this. It's just, if you want to, if you feel the need, saying, hey, a big name would help this. I mean, I don't pull too many punches, but I've yet to be turned down. And so we have, I mean, it depends on how high you go. I mean, getting the president might be a tough task, but it doesn't mean it won't happen. But because they have to be careful too. A good case in point was Anthony Munoz, obviously a Hall of Famer, a great lineman for the Bengals. I see him a lot at the Bengals games. He's in my book, and told him all about it. I gave him a copy of it. I've done pictures with him in the past. He doesn't have a problem with that. He was not cautious about holding the picture up with the book. He says, let me read this first. Let me read this first.
All right, though.
I said, hey, fair game. I said, here's your chapter. Check it out. I saw him the other day. He said, Dell, I love that. All right, great. Well, good. Now, credibility. So Don't take it for granted. Don't just get it to get it. Make sure, because now he trusts me a little bit. If he sees me now, so it's all works out good. But if they always go on their terms.
Well, the chat wants to know, how do you initiate it? Do you start with an email, and kind of how do you grab their attention? How do you initiate this contact that is a little bit distant?
It can be very distant. there's numerous ways. Email, if you can get an email, get an email. If you have to research their agent, that is that's going to be a bigger obstacle because the agent their job is to protect the player, and it's also their job to make money. So if you're not going to be able to offer them any financial assistance, the agent probably not going to care to talk to you. Or if they also they want to protect the reputation of the player too. So going to the agent, I would recommend the last step, but I've been successful there too. But contact, if you want to try to get somebody who's a celebrity, research them, research who their agent is first of all, research some places they might be going to, some appearances they might be making, and then reach out. There are contacts. If you have to go to the agent, go to the agent. I have been successful, but you have to state your case. Tell them what you want. That's how I got to Tebow. It took me numerous. Don't give up. Great case in point is when I got to talk to Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees 2 years ago. Aaron, at that time, was the hottest name in baseball, and he was Rookie of the Year, All-Star. So I sent an email. I normally don't, but I sent an email to the Yankees. I said, you guys are coming to Cleveland. I'd like to get a couple minutes with Aaron before the game, before any game, 5 minutes. They said no. Right off the bat, no. His time's too valuable. I said, okay. I went up there anyway. So and walked in the clubhouse, and there's Aaron Judge sitting by himself at a table, all by himself on his phone. I said, Mr. Judge, you got a couple of minutes to talk about your faith? Well, yeah, sit down. I'd love to talk to you.
Wow.
So I mean, again, their job is to say no to protect the player. And I get that. It wasn't personal. But I've also been able to get time with Clayton Kershaw. I sent them an email. Hey, I want to do a piece for Focus on the Family. Can we have a few minutes? Yes. Be here a certain day, and you can talk to him. So what I do, I don't go through their agent. I'll go through the media relations department with the Angels or with the Dodgers or with the Yankees. But most of the time, I just show up and go into the clubhouse.
Wow.
But if it's a big name, I will send out an email and ask their permission. And even if you're told no, try it because it works for me. But if you want to get a movie star or a famous authors are easily accessed. You can find an author on their webpage and contact them an email and talk to them. And don't be wordy, don't be lengthy, and they don't care about your life story. So when you go in, when I do an interview, the best advice I give, ask your question 1 or 2 sentences and shut up. They don't want to hear about how you relate to it. They don't want to hear about your experience. I've seen it. I'll ask you a question. You'll start talking. I'll interrupt you because I want to top it. I want to tell you what I experienced. They don't care about that. If you have a question, ask your question without commentary, without relations, then go to the next question and be quiet.
Well, that's a wonderful segue into the interview because we were going to highlight and talk about the interview and stuff like that. Do you prep all your questions ahead of time? Do you provide your questions to them ahead of time, especially to someone like a celebrity? What's some of the tips you can give us on interviewing?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 questions first that you want to get first. No chit chat. Don't go up. And the biggest turn off to any celebrity is if you act like a fan. That is the bit. They will just don't say, I'm a big fan of yours. I want your autograph. Don't ask for autographs. Don't ask for pictures. You're there to work. You're there to work. Don't be starstruck, even though you might be. Don't act like it. That's a big turnoff for them. So when I go up to talk to Albert Pujols, I have 3 or 4 questions I want to get out because I have a limited amount of time. And if I waste their time chit-chatting, telling about what I did this weekend, you've wasted time. Yeah. And so get to your questions. Tom Rinaldi of NBC's probably or ESPN's one of the best ones. He will ask the question, 1 sentence, the person answers, he goes to the next question. Does it nod? Does it right, Don't do that stuff because if you're recording it and you're going yes, I've gone back and done that and say, I can't hear what they're saying because I'm talking. So ask the question, and I'm being polite and respectful. Ask the question and shut your mouth and be quiet. then I played an example of my interview with Tim Tebow because I was able to record it or video it. I asked him a question. I let him answer. And he talked for a minute. I asked another question. He talked for another minute. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't stand. And so let them talk. You're there to hear what they have to say. Let them talk. So again, don't chit chat. Don't be starstruck. Don't be giddy and act like a little, schoolgirl or whatever. And that's not, don't do that stuff. Even you fake it. So ask the questions, get out of the way, and let them answer and go on to the next question.
Do you always record? You keep your camera recorder?
And always have a backup. Have a recorder, because I've been there. I've learned the hard way. I use my phone a lot, and I'll have I don't have it with me, and a digital recorder, because your battery might die.
Right.
Something may happen. I always if you can, have a backup, because I've been there too. It's been a long time, but I learned the hard way. Record a whole interview like, oh, I didn't have it on, and it's over. So you learn, you live and learn. So I use my phone, and I have a digital recorder, and I run them at the same time. You don't have to ask permission. You don't need, because if you're holding a microphone in their face, they know they're being recorded. It's on the record. There is no such thing ever on God's green earth as off the record. There is no such thing as off the record ever. So if somebody says that, if you're in an interview and they go, and this is off the record, turn your recorder off.
Yeah.
Turn it off, because you want their trust. And if they say, hey, Dale, this is off the record, I go, like, click, it's off.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions? So many writers are kind of introverted and more reserved. You seem like you're very comfortable with people. Mm-hmm. And not all right. In fact, I think a lot of writers are more the introverted and stuff like that. Our INFJs, right, Bethany? We're INFJs. And you've got almost a natural, seems like, connection that way. Do you got any tips for us on?
Yeah, they're just normal people. They are normal people who have problems, who have problems like you and I do. I was in the clubhouse last year, and I was listening to the guy I was wanting to talk to on the phone with his wife. Their pipes burst, and there was water everywhere. So they have problems like you and I do. So they're people. So I don't get starstruck. They just happen to have resources to handle the problems. So they're conversationals. When you want to talk to them about their faith, they open up to you. And they like talking about that, because I don't ask that a lot. So I was able to talk to a guy this weekend. He's like, man, he said, I love talking about my faith. Nobody asked me. Because reporters are there to report on the game. They don't care about the person's faith. And I get that too. So mine was, I know you answered a lot of questions. I want to talk to you about your relationship with God. Oh, man, that's great. I want to talk about that. So they find it refreshing. And it's just to have a conversation with them. Again, ask a question, go to the next question. Then when you're done, if you're finished with the 2 or 3 questions that you want to know, then chit chat with them. Then talk about, hey, my dog did this, and my kid did that, or my grandkids did this. So I showed my picture of my grandson to a guy who was in the book this weekend, because I've talked to him enough to where we know each other. And he has kids. I said, man, it's better when you're a grandparent. He goes, really? I said, so I showed him. Oh, that's great. I can't wait for this day. So once you get past that, you develop a relationship with them. I don't bother them. I have a lot of contacts with these folks. I don't bother them unless I need something. I have cell phone numbers of some pretty well-known athletes, but I don't bother them.
Yeah.
Unless I maybe hear. Yeah. With Clint Hurdle, we stay in contact, but I don't bother the guy. And I said, last communication I had with him was when I was wanting to do a book signing. And he said, sure. And then I sent him, we made a little donation to his foundation. He sent me a text message saying, thank you very much. So yeah, you have contacts, you keep those contacts, they're private, never share them with anybody. If somebody wants to know how to get in touch with Tim Tebow, well, here's his agent's number.
Yeah.
Or this is this person, this is the route I went. Mm-hmm. Now I have other means of communicating with him.
And you keep those close. Got it.
Yeah, you don't give them anybody. But I mean, I'll sell them to people who write them out.
Let's talk about Tim Tebow again, because I think at the beginning you said 30. I'm not saying I'm quoting on the exact number. It might be 38 emails and 20-something texts to him. I think I would have sent, just to be honest, and I want to know in the chat who's with me on this, I would have sent one. I may have sent a follow-up, and at that point, I would have felt like I had bothered them and stopped, and yet 38.
30 emails, yeah. So there's ways to do that without being considered a stalker. So I did those because that was 38 total. My first communication, get in contact with a person took about 9. Don't give up. Assume they didn't see the email. Because a great case in point was when I was trying to get Jim Tressel. I didn't know Jim Tressel from Adam. So I called his administrative assistant up at Youngstown State University, left her a message. She didn't call me back. A week later, I called her again. She didn't call me back. The third time I called her, she picked up. I said, "Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to call you." So had I just given up and said, well, she doesn't want to talk to me, let them tell you, don't bother me. Let them say, hey, guys, this isn't going to happen. So if you assume their email was overlooked or they didn't get your voicemail, because chances are they might not have. So don't give up. Be persistent without being pushy. Space your communications out a little bit. That took me over the course of 3 weeks to get to him before he called me back. And he did call me back because his receptionist, I was very nice and polite to her, even though if somebody's mean and nasty to you, always be nice to them. And say, hey, I understand your position, but this is what I'm doing, and your job is to protect the player or the coach. I get it, but this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me? And if you approach it like that, they might say, sure. You know what? Yeah, because they're used to dealing with pushy people trying. What's coming down here too? Snow's coming down hard. They're used to dealing with pushy people who have a deadline, who just want to get something for a headline. So you're different. You're wanting to talk to them about a book, about an idea that you want them to partner with them on, and be sure to tell them up front if you're able to get to them. Like I had to get to Jim Tressel and say, because we did a picture together, I had to get his release for the picture. Yeah, by the way, coach, you're not getting a dime for this. Okay. Okay. So he signs it anyway. But just say, without monetary expectations, you're going to use your picture because you're using their picture to sell the book. So,
right.
But what was the question again? I'm sorry, I went off topic.
I know, but I got a technical question. When you
Yes.
record on your phone, do you have a particular app that you use?
I just use the voice memo.
I just wondered about that. I use the voice menu a lot, but
voice memo, and then I have a digital recorder as a backup. Because
I wanted to be sure there might have been another trick out there I didn't know about.
Always carry extra batteries. I've been there too. Always have extra batteries. Been there. So you never have too much, but don't go in with 19 cameras like that. But I use the 2, and I have batteries for my phone always in my car or wherever I go.
Yeah, Rachel shared in the chat, and I think this is a very good point, because from my years of interviewing for our local newspaper, I found this true. That she says Jerry Jenkins counsels that don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes just wait. And Rachel found that's true. And I'll add to that. Sometimes I find you're on the entire time. Sometimes they give you the best quote as you're heading out the door.
Yeah, silence sometimes is good. They're either thinking or in fact, Ben Zobers of the Cubs did that. I was talking to him about. I forget what question I asked him, but it stumped him. And he just sat there and looked. And he says, "That's an interesting question." And he said probably 20 seconds before he said something.
And it seems long.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is long. And so the first reaction is to kill that silence. Well, silence sometimes it can be good if they're thinking about it, and then never come in and say, well, and kind of help them out of the hole. If they're trying to figure out something, let them talk about it, because awkward silence sometimes can be good. A case in point with Ben, it was a good question and stumped him. He finally gave me a great answer. I forget the question, but I remember that moment of him just looking off, and then he finally answered.
Wow, that is something.
Yeah, it was a good interview.
On that, what other interview tips do you have for us that you could suggest for novices?
Don't give up, and don't think too small. Think big. I mean, criminy, think big. If for my Buckeye book, I thought, what bigger name could I get than Jim Tressel? So I got Jim Tressel. There were several that came to mind, but he was the easiest to get to, I think. So Urban Meyer's unapproachable, but Archie Griffin, I was trying to get to Archie Griffin, but I could not find any way to get a hold of that guy. So everywhere I called, they didn't know where he was. So didn't settle for Jim Trestle. Jim Trestle's an awesome name
Yeah.
to have a book. So I was very happy with that. And so you have a list of folks you'd like to get on your book and try it. Go for it. My goal, my target was eventually get to Tebow, and I was able to get to that because I played the game right. I didn't slide in the back door. I didn't catch them off guard.
Mm-hmm.
They knew up front what I was going to talk about, and I stuck to that. I mean, I could have gone a different way, but I told them I want to talk to him about his foundation because we volunteer at it. And I showed the guy in charge of him. I said, well, here's pictures of me and my wife volunteering at his event. You know, I'm shining shoes in a tuxedo. And he came back and Tim told me off the air, he says, yeah, you know, I figured, yeah, you gave 2 or 3 hours of my event. I can give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk.
Wow.
Because he doesn't do exclusives at these events. He doesn't do one-on-ones. I was able to get to him for 3 minutes. Just me, nobody else.
3 minutes is awful short time for an interview.
No, I got everything I was needing. I got enough for 5 devotions out of that.
Because are you serious? Now, tell us how you did that. How did you focus your questions to get that? That is amazing.
That is amazing, Del.
Well, you have your questions, short questions, and ask them their thoughts on it, and just let them talk. And most of these guys are used to talking, and so they talk. And Tim talked. Each question he answered for a minute. And if you talk for a minute, that's a lot of words. And it was like 3 pages of notes, just 2 minutes of talking. So you can get a lot out. And I asked him questions about what it means to him. So what does it mean for these to you? Why did you do this Night to Shine event? Why do you want to give back to that population, to those folks who have special needs? What do you see in them that we all need to see? And he goes off on this tangent, which was awesome, about how, you know, God has called him to love. We are called as Christians to love those that the world deems unlovable. And so it's a great way to minister and to promote God's love. And he just talked for 3 minutes on that. And it was awesome because there was no dead silence. It was an awkward silence. So have 2 or 3 questions, short questions, ask them how they feel about things or what brought them to this point or what happened in their life. And then they start reflecting. And then you got them in a conversation. Just never say, well, you know, how did that make you feel? Say something like, what brought you to this moment? Can you recall a specific incident to where, this turning point in your life? What brought you to God? What made you make a decision to follow Christ? And then in their answer, pick up on something. Like they would say, well, my mom and dad, were good examples. Well, what did they do? Can you recall something specific they did? Oh, mom would make dinner for the preacher and he'd come over. Well, what was your favorite meal? What did you love that she made? And then he would start talking more about that. So there's always reflect back in your conversations to something they say and say, do you remember something specific about that really stood out? And that's how
the follow-up question, isn't it?
Oh man, they're awesome because follow-ups are, but when you get them to thinking about recalling memories, a great one was, I was talking to Brian Dozier, who plays for the Nationals now, but just won a World Series, and he brought up Christmas. And I said, well, Brian, what was one of your favorite Christmas gifts as a kid? Oh man, Dad got me this and this and this. I said, well, so why did you want that gift? And so he told me, well, what did it mean for your daddy? Oh man, it meant the world. My dad worked hard. Well, what did your dad do? So they start talking, and then you get information from that, and you can form that into a nice story.
Wow.
But once you get them talking and go back, they love talking about memories.
Wow.
And
memories or their passion. And you said that like with Tebow, he talked about something he was passionate about. So
yeah, his foundation. And so it was awesome. And that's what I wanted. That's how I figured that was my best way to get to him, because I knew he's passionate about it. If I want to talk to him about, if I told the guy over the media, hey, I just want to talk to him about his baseball career, he answers that all the time. I want to talk to him about his Night to Shine Foundation. Okay, great. So he doesn't talk about that much. So it's something he's passionate about. I showed them pictures of me working at the event. I showed him pictures with me and his mom. So it kind of softened him up a little bit, because I didn't know till that day. I mean, I've been emailing this guy for weeks. I didn't know till that day. I didn't know till an hour before I got to if I was going to get the interview or not. But I was there anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. So have your questions ready. Don't be I mean, I wanted to, shake his hand and get selfies and something like that. No, I was there to do a job. I could hear Tim walking down the hallway with the guy over who made the decision, telling him about me. So he said, "This guy's gonna talk to you about this, and this, and this." And so I stuck to that. I could have ventured off, but I didn't. And I could have hijacked him, but I didn't. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay on good terms because next year when the book's out, I might need him to give me another picture.
Right. Never burn your bridge.
Never burn your bridge. Some people have done that. I mean, Jim Gray, when he interviewed Pete Rose live, was a horrible interview. He totally ambushed him. So live on the air, Katie Couric did that to George Bush one time, just ambushed him. So you don't want to do that stuff. You don't want to catch him off guard, even though you're dying to find out something. Don't do that.
You brought up a point too. If you're not good at interviewing or you're hesitant, let's say not good, let's say you're hesitant because you haven't experienced it much, watch some superb interviewers.
Look up Tom Rinaldi from ESPN. Tom Rinaldi is probably, other than me, probably the best. I'm kidding. He's one of the best interviewers. I love some of the folks on Fox News, but they're terrible. They're terrible interviewers. They always interrupt. They always give their viewpoint. They always spin it around. It's about them. It's not about you. You're there talking to them. Leave yourself, and don't ever say, "Oh gosh, I'm nervous." Don't be starstruck. That's an instant turn off for them. If you want to talk, if I go up to Clayton Kershaw, "Oh, man, I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm so nervous." They're going to say, "What a goofball." They're going to be thinking, do I want to talk to this person? So go up, "Mr. Kershaw, I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes about your faith. I want to talk to you about some big moments in your life that's either challenged your faith or strengthened it. You want to talk about?" Well, sure. And do some research on them. Know what they want to talk about. Yeah, so you've done research on them, so because they're not going to repeat the same story. So.
That's an excellent point, because I learned that again when I was a reporter, to have a little bit of enough of a background, so I at least I had a place to start, and I also brought something, and I don't want to mean talking about yourself, but to be able to sit there and say, I know this is your foundation. Let's use that as an example. Or I understand you grew up here, and
yeah, exactly. Find a common ground with them.
Mm-hmm.
They'll know that you've done some research on them. I was able to get a couple of minutes with Mike Tomlin, who's the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that way, because the guy's an intimidating guy. He's an intense man, a good coach. I'm not a Steelers fan, but he's a good coach. He gives back to the community. And so he's walking by me after a game, and I just talked to Roethlisberger, and I thought, I hadn't really focused on Tomlin, but I knew some things he does. I know he does proclaim a faith. So he's an intense man. So he was walking by me after a game, after he got dressed, everything, was heading to the bus. And I said, "Coach Tomlin." He goes, "Yeah." It was like I was bothering him. I said, "Hey, I appreciate all the work you do with the Underground Railroad. That's a charity he gives to." And he turned to me, looked, I thought it was going to hit me. And he says, "Thank you. Thank you." He says, "That's a great organization." And I was like, "Wow, this guy's intense." So he's passionate. So I said, "How'd you get involved with this?" And I had my recorder out. I said, "How'd you get him?" So he told me a whole story, how he became involved with the Underground Railroad and how it's path. We all need to be involved with this group. I was wore out by the time he got done talking to me, but I knew what he was involved with, asked him about it, and he just went off on it. It was awesome. And I'll have a great devotion in First Down Devotions Volume 2 because of that conversation. It was a great conversation we had.
Well, then let me ask you this. So let's say we're at a writer's conference and we have a chance to talk to the keynote speaker, and it's spontaneous like that. We've done some research, and yet we have the chance to ask one or two, and we get this nugget. Now, do you need to get their permission to put that in that devotional or to put that in that book? What's your process at that point?
I've never had to do that. I don't think you do have to do that. You don't, if you're talking to them in a public setting and you have your stuff there, you don't have to have permission to use a conversation. Now, I think when I was doing one of my editors came back and she said, "You need to get these permissions for all these quotes." And I said, "No, I don't," because that, for one, it'd be impossible. And two, I have a microphone in their face. They know they're on the record. So no, everything's fair game. If you're in a conversation, just you two somewhere, I don't know, but if you say, hey, I want to talk to you about this, I'm doing a book for them, I'm doing a report, I'm doing a story on this, they're going to know what they say is on the record. And again, there's no such thing as off the record. So you don't have to get the permission. The only time you need a permission is if you're trying to use their image, like a picture, then they have to sign a release for that. Okay. But if I'm talking to you right now, everything you tell me, I can write a story about it and put it in publication right now.
Publishers are getting very intense with that permissions stuff. I mean, just the last two, we've had all this paperwork we have to fill out for these small things that happened. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to cover, I think, themselves, but in reality, you don't have to. But I think if the publisher wants it, then you kind of got to, you're in a position where you may have to examine that situation. But my editor for the Dugout and First Downs questioned that, and she said, "You're going to need permission." I just said, "No, I'm not." And everything I say, they tell me is on the record, and it's recorded. I'm not duking them. I'm not saying, hey, tell me this just between you and me. Who was the reporter that did that? Connie, wanted her name, but that was awful. Uh-huh. So no, there's no such thing as that. So I've never been presented with that, because everything I say is taped. And they know what I'm doing, because I tell them I'm doing a book, I'm writing a story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think if you tell them up front, if that's recorded, you've covered yourself there too. But if you want to go up to a keynote speaker like a Bethany Jett, who's at a big keynote, and you want to go up to her and talk to her about it, I would just tell her up front, hey, I'm writing a devotion, I'm writing a story, I'm writing a book, and what you said was great. Can I talk to you a little bit more about that? Mm-hmm. And for sure. And then Bethany will want to check for it. And then I'm kidding. So, and then you talk to them about it, and then thank you. I always thank them for the time. I always ask for a way to contact them. Always. Wow. If you're done with some superstar, hey, if I need to follow up, how do I get in touch with you? They may give you their agent's number, but I've got like 15 agents' numbers now, because they say that. Oh, here, call my agent. Okay, great, thank you. And always leave a card with them. I've developed some friendships. When I'm done, I leave a card. I leave them a way to contact me. And I've had
thank you notes or anything like that. I heard you say you gave books to them, though. You be sure then if you use their story, you either send them or give them a book, or do you look for?
Yeah, if they're in the book, I typically give them one, because I'm trying to promote it too. Like I did a picture with that Area of the Colts, who's in Dugout. There's First Down Devotions. Hey, outside the locker room. Hey, can we get a picture of the book? Yeah, okay, great. Click, and that helps a little bit of promotions. I've asked some to do videos. Videos can be iffy. Plus, there are rules in the clubhouse. There's no pictures, so I try to get outside the clubhouse. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Always wait till it's done. If your interview's over, because you don't want to be considered a fan. So there are certain times you just don't do it. You don't ask for a picture in the clubhouse. I always ask them. Like when I did my story on Ben Roethlisberger, the guy over the PR was with me the entire time, because it was a touchy subject, and so he listened to the conversation, and we had a group conversation. And when we were done, I said, "Hey, can we document this with a pic? Is that okay?" Yeah, sure. And then that guy took the picture of it. So always ask. Don't just do it, because that's, again, you don't want to be considered a fan, and that's bothersome to them. And always ask at the end of the conversation, hey, this has been a great talk. I'd love to, can I commemorate this with a picture? It'd be awesome. Sure. I don't think I've ever been turned down, but I asked some, but not every. I mean, I could probably have dozens more, but I just fill out the situation.
Yeah, these are great points. Great points. We only probably have 5 minutes before we invite everybody back on. Bethany, I don't know what other questions that you had ready that you might want to throw out here at the end.
Well, you covered so much of kind of like, what I wanted to know. You mentioned, I think you said something about you have 3 questions. Are there 3 questions that you always ask? Or, I mean, it's going to vary depending, but are you trying to cover 3 different umbrella topics with them?
No, I'm just finding out if I read about them, something that's been big in their life, I'll ask about that. No, I don't have any. I don't have the same questions. They're all different. Because if you go out and say, "What's your faith mean to me?" They're all going to say the same thing. My faith's everything. Well, why is it everything? So why did you decide it's everything? Well, I was taken to church my whole life. Who took you to church? Well, my grandma, because everybody say my mom. Oh, my grandma took me to church. Well, why did she take you to church? Well, my dad left when I was little. So you had a rough childhood. Yeah. So once you start doing follow-ups and let a conversation take over, but have 2 or 3 questions. You may not get those questions. You may not ask them.
Yeah.
Be ready for those questions. But I always have 3 or 4 that I want to ask if I'm able to.
Mhm.
But again, having a generic one kind of just gives them a generic answer. So have a specific question, do some research about something that they've read about in the past, how they overcame a major injury or whatever, or a major setback when they were 19 years old. Michael Lorenzen of the Reds has a phenomenal, probably the best testimony I've ever heard from anybody ever in my life. And I knew about that. So I asked him about it. Man, he has talked to me forever about it because he loves talking about it.
Mhm.
So, and it's in Dugout Devotions, by the way. You can buy that at Barnes & Noble. It's a great story. So research it, have them ask about it, and always ask them to elaborate on it, or if they bring up their parents, or what was your dad like? What did he do? Why did he inspire you? Or what did your mom do? Did she work in the church? And so just have a conversation with them and let them start talking. And the best advice again is let them talk and be quiet, and don't interrupt them, and don't right, yes. Don't do that stuff, because you're going to replay something and you're not going to hear it because you were trying to talk. So be quiet in a loving way.
And I think all the follow-up questions would really help if it was, like you said, a lot of them were talkers, though. They're used to being interviewed. And I know some of the people I interviewed in the paper were not, and some of them were very hard to kind of get them going with their story. But I think the follow-up questions is a key to that.
Yeah, and I've been there where you're at, and you just want to say, can you talk? Can you make a sentence out of this? So, yeah, exactly. So I haven't run into that lately. But I have been there, and you want them to elaborate. I did actually. I have one who'll be in first down devotions too. He plays for the Browns. He was kind of he just didn't talk a lot, and I finally found I was finally searching and finally found something that was really cool that he told me, and I heard it because I asked my questions. He gave me the yeses and the nos and maybes, and then he said, I bring my Bible to every game on the road. I said, really? I said, do you have it with you? Because yeah. And he pulls it forward. He says, here's my Bible. I said, so why do you do that? Why do you bring your Bible to every game? He says, what's your favorite scripture? What's your favorite? Oh, well, I like it. So it took me a few minutes, but I finally got it. So you start talking about it. What do you do that? And then he talks about it. Well, who inspired you to do that? The God, so, and then we had a good conversation at that point. But yeah, I've been there where it's, yeah, no. And you just you keep going.
You just
ask them to
I
talk.
think that's been a summary of a good today, that be persistent and be professional. And be prepared.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what you've highlighted for us today in the interview.
Yeah, always have a plan B. If you have this question, it's no. This question is no. This question is no. Your fourth question might be the one that opens up.
Okay.
What's interesting? I'm sorry, Jean.
Go ahead.
What's interesting about this is we could take the same concept that you've got going with the athletes, and even for someone writing a novel or in their genre, they could interview people who are believers within every industry and make a devotional out of that too, which would only then help other projects, I'm guessing. I mean, it's really brilliant concept and series that you've got going, though.
Yeah, again, I'm just dealing with and some players aren't well known. Some people may not know who the long snapper of the Baltimore Ravens is, but he's in my book because I knew he's a believer. So yeah, he told me the other night when I first interviewed him. He goes, I walked up to him. I said, "You got a couple of minutes?" He goes, "Yeah, did I do something wrong?" He said, "The only time media wants to talk to me is when I screw up." I'm like, no. So he's like, nobody ever wants to talk to me. So I talked to him. So it doesn't have to be a celebrity, or it could be a council member. It could be a mayor. It could be somebody influential in your community who could be a local celebrity and who could have an impact on moving your book on a local level. It could be your local radio talk show host or something like that you want to talk to. So the same applies. Ask a question and be quiet. Then do your follow-up questions and get them to open up. It's not hard. Just don't be starstruck. Don't be giddy. Don't be, you're there to do a job and be professional about it the whole time, but develop relationships, contact them, reach out to them. They're just normal folks like you and me.
That sounds great. Well, this has been great, Dal. We'll invite everybody to come on back on if you want to come on back in. And I don't know. I know I didn't put anybody in Writers Chat jail, but we always tell especially if you're new here, if we've taken you off camera, you might have to put it in the chat and stuff. Now they want me to repeat the 3 P's that I said. Let's see. What did I say? Be prepared, be persistent, be professional. Was that my alliteration, Rhonda? My amazing alliteration?
I think that was it.
And Del, we did have a question about how quickly do you process your interviews and form the story afterwards? Kind of what's your timeline?
If I don't go back, like I interviewed an athlete Sunday, and when I got home Sunday night, I transcribed all the notes. Because if I don't do it, they build up and they build up and they build up. So I do them as soon as I can. I don't write the devotion right away, but I make sure my notes are ready, because if you want back to your recorder list, I've got 15 on here. Then you can lose track of them. I get them transcribed and done, and I never erase them because you may need them in the future. Or if somebody says I didn't say that, you can always go back. Yes, you did. So never erase them.
Yeah. And do you do your own transcription, or do you use a certain program?
I just do it myself. I'm old school. I just sit down and play it and type it out myself.
Yeah. And that way you really hear it too. You get
ideas
when you do
it.
Or
if they said something you didn't understand, you go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times. So, because some of them don't speak. I mean, I talked to a guy who had a really thick Cuban accent, and it took me numerous times to see, what's this guy saying? You know.
That's another reason why to do it right away, because you may have understood him when you interviewed him, but if 2 weeks later you won't understand that.
Oh my gosh, I've gone up to the press box and done it right there, because I just want to get it done.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have a last minute question for Dal as we wrap up with the group that's here?
I would just add to my
Rachel, if you're asking, you're off. You're muted. Sorry, Dal.
No, I was just going to say.
Rachel?
Let Del go.
Oh. Hey.
Hey. Do you use your camera, or do you use your phone for photos of your interviewees?
I will use this my camera. I mean my phone.
Okay.
Let's use my phone. It's just easier because, if you're able to set up something, that's awesome. But mine are always on the fly, spur of the moment, impromptu. I don't know who I'm going to be getting, so I may go in with one guy in mind. And it's something else I've done when I go into the locker rooms. I'll say, who else should I talk to? Who else has a testimony? Oh yeah, you need to talk to this guy. Okay, great. I didn't know that. So I carry as little as I can. So I don't have any big cameras. I just use my phone.
Okay.
Simple. Yeah. But what I was going to say is don't limit yourself. If you need to try to get again, it doesn't have to be a celebrity, but if you want to go that route, you can get to them. It just takes some work and takes some persistence, but don't sell yourself short on things. If you need to get whoever, go for it. Try them. Because, you got a good shot at getting them.
That's so encouraging. So encouraging.
Yeah.
This has been a great, I think Bethany came up with the idea to interview about interviewing. On that. Anything last minute, Bethany, you want to add or conclude?
I think just even going into the after party, Del, I think it's interesting how you've been able to even pitch this series to publishers. We might maybe go down that route a little bit too, because so much of the interview can be found probably online in Google, and you're putting it all into a different package as well. But
yeah, working with Kyle on that and some other publishers, they've seen the potential for it. So we're doing volumes 2 now, and then they've liked this idea so much that we've even had discussions, nothing formal. We've just had some conversations about turning it into making a children's book too.
yeah.
Yeah, so we're just talking about that to see how they do. Right now, Dugout Devotions is doing really, really well. First Down's off to a decent start. We're going to have volumes 2 here real soon, and then if they continue to do well, because they have more people, so we've been able to talk to them about that because, I guess fortunately, unfortunately, a lot of kids look up to these players, and so we try to highlight the good ones. So that's why they want to possibly discuss a series for kids. So that's where that's taken us. Again, 3 years ago, I never even thought about writing devotions like this. So it's just we've just gone with it, working with Kyle on it, other good publishers. I think it's an endless possibility and a lot of potential on it. It's because we're going to go down some different avenues with it. And there's always, we're talking about racing, possible race car series.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah. So, basketball is tough to get a hold of these folks, but we can do it. It's just harder. So everybody wants soccer. We'll see.
Wow. Oh, that is
endless. It's fun though. It's a lot of fun.
I bet you're having fun, which is part of the key. You got to have fun while we do this and stuff. Yeah. And it's also for the glory of God. It's
about research, on the games.
Yeah, and it helps them share their faith. And like you said, it gives an aspect of their life that most sports reporters don't have. So,
and again, one thing: know who you're going to talk to and know their background. Because I went up to one athlete who's on his Twitter page said something about he loves God, and he just had no clue what I was talking about. So I just went to the next target after that. So make sure that what they're talking about is true, because I didn't, he was kind of uncomfortable. I was kind of uncomfortable.
Oh no.
Yeah, I just said maybe I'll talk to somebody else. So that's fine.
Good for you and stuff like that. I love it. Well, thank you, Del, very much. We invite you to stay with us for a few minutes, and when we quit the recording, we'll go in the after party, and we'll give you a hint next week what we're going to talk about. We're going to paint with words, and we're going to talk about how you can use metaphors as a writing tool, both fiction and nonfiction. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. And Bethany, any final thing that you want to say before you finish recording? Anything?
I do not.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for being with us this week. Enjoy the replay. We appreciate the time that you take watching the replay. And again, thank you, Del. This has been inspirational.
So I think good.
This has been excellent. And the time flew. I couldn't believe it when I kept looking at the clock, and it was like, we're almost out of time. So thank you, and thank you for joining us. And we'll see you all next week. Bye now.